Hungry Trilobyte podcast would like to start by acknowledging SoonerCon. Get ready for the next chapter in Oklahoma's longest-running fan-run pop culture convention. SoonerCon will be returning in 2024, June 21st through 23rd. Get ready for a weekend of cosplay, fun and excitement, vendors, gaming, and more. You can go to SoonerCon.com for more information.
We are live at FanExpo Chicago with Elsinore from the Organization For Transformative Works. How are you having a good weekend here?
I'm having a spectacular weekend. We are at the fan tables over here in FanExpo. This is one of our first actually live events because the Organization For Transformative Works has been around for more than a decade, but we've been mostly in online space, so it's nice to actually see our fans in person and get to kind of see everybody light up when they realize that, hey, wait, AO3 is actually here and I can meet people?
Yeah, this is what people don't understand is that a lot of my audience is going to be more familiar with the output of your organization, AO3, the Archive of Our Own, which, if you're not familiar, is basically like the Internet Archive for fanfiction.
Yes, so we have a bunch of different projects, but the most famous, the most notorious of them is the Internet's largest fanfiction archive. AO3, Archive of Our Own, hosts a ton of different content for every fandom that you can think of, and if it's not a fandom yet, write a work and we will make one for you.
I'm going to confess something I don't think I've ever said before.
Okay, I'm here for it.
That a long time ago, a much younger me thought it would be a good idea to make a fan fiction, which isn't the hard part. It was a Get Smart Friends crossover.
I love that.
And I don't know why I thought this would be a great idea, but it seemed to make sense for 15-year-old me.
Some of the best things to read on the archive are crossovers that don't feel like they should make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're just like, okay, these two fandoms, you're putting what together? And then it's absolutely brilliant. And there are some of the fandoms, like one of my absolute favorites is a crossover between Full Metal Alchemist and Criminal Minds.
Okay.
Now, I've never seen an episode of Criminal Minds in my life. I know it exists. It's just like, it's a procedural. I'm sure it's wonderful. It's just never really been on my radar. But I love FMA, and so I've read a couple of this author's other works, and I was like, okay, I'll read it. It was incredibly gripping. I don't know why this works. It really shouldn't, but it's incredible. Or like, there's one of Darth Vader goes hunting with the Witcher, the Winchesters,
okay,
like from Supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
It is like a modern AU where it's absolutely meta, where like the Winchesters know who Darth Vader is. And again, these things should not work.
But why does it work? And it's because that author, whether they're 14 or 84, they made certain choices that the reader's going to pick up on that kind of starts to fill in the gaps that really you just can't imagine filling in those gaps. And that's not a bad way to build your writing powers.
No, it's absolutely, and it's so incredible to watch this person's creativity and how they change things or mush the universes together. And they just make things so fun and so interesting and so gripping. Or it's utterly ridiculous and they're going for it. And that's part of the creativity of fandom, where you're just like, this is amazing. And you see the same thing in a lot of cosplay here at conventions, where you're just like, I saw one a couple years ago where someone was a mashup of Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat and Elsa.
Mm-hmm. That totally works.
But like, you never would have thought of it. And then all of a sudden you're seeing Sub-Zero Elsa and you're like, this is brilliant.
And here's the thing is that's how you're going to get actual news stories that you'll want to make into books and movies. You just start running with ideas. Like, people don't realize that in Japan, Power Rangers and Transformers were completely different than the way we Americans know them. They just, it was basically a large corporate form of fan fiction. They just re-engineered it for this new audience.
Yeah, all of the Kamen Rider and Super Sentai content. I mean, it was in Japan way before it came into the States, and then like the original Power Rangers that came to the States, all they did was they edited out all of the actual teenagers. Mm-hmm. They kept all of the fight scenes, which is why they don't make sense. They just redid all of the dubbing on the fight scenes and all of the villains, and then they just put in new teenagers.
And what's the difference between taking out those Japanese actors and putting in, say, a bunch of American actors versus taking out the Japanese actors and putting in you and your friends? I don't see a functional difference.
Ownership rights.
Okay, fair enough. But I'm just saying, in terms of creativity, it's the same.
Ownership rights.
Okay. But that does touch on a lot of things that people will think that you're writing a fan fiction for Star Wars, Star Trek, Supernatural, and you don't have the rights to those characters, and they think that that's going to get them in trouble.
One of the things that the OTW is extraordinarily dedicated to is, that we are a non-commercial space. It's so rare nowadays that you can have something that's not a side hustle. You start crocheting or you start hemming your pants and someone goes, oh my god, you should put that on Etsy. Where you're just allowed to do something for the enjoyment of it. And AO3 is entirely non-commercial. You're not allowed to promote your Patreon or your Ko-fi or whatever it is. There's no ads, there's no nothing. It is completely money-free. Twice a year we ask for donations because we are completely donation-run. But we don't have any ads, we don't have any tracking, we don't have anything else. We do not want to know who you are. It is a commercial-free space, which is so incredibly rare nowadays, where everything's about your side hustle. And then the other thing is that we actually, one of our main functions is our legal advocacy, where we've testified before Congress, and our appeal lawyers have written advocacy briefs about how we want to make sure that if you are doing something that is transformative and non-commercial, meaning that you are, using somebody else's IP, but you're not making money off of it, that you're able to say, hey, you don't get to sue me because this is my art, this is my thing, this is my writing, this is my very cool crocheted scarf of a Gengar.
Mm-hmm. And that manages to keep you under the radar of most of the major IP holders.
I wouldn't say we're under the radar. I mean, people know who we are, but we are...
You're not getting nasty letters is what I'm getting at.
No, we're dealing with the nasty letters. We specifically deal with them. And if you need to, you can contact legal@transformativeworks.org, and even if we can't represent you, we can help you, point you in the right direction.
So if you're somebody out there who's writing such things and you get, a nasty letter, that might be more than just a nasty letter. At least this is somebody who can turn to, who can give you reasonable advice as to which way to go.
Absolutely. And honestly, though, because you're writing something, and let's say you're writing a Star Trek fanfiction, as long as you're not making money off of your Star Trek fanfiction, you have every right to do that. And that's one of the foundational beliefs of the OTW.
Does that tend to be backed up in the real world, that you can put that up on your personal website? Like, I would have put my fan fiction up on my website way back when. It's not up there anymore, and I've never had any problems with it. And this was at a time when there was not really a clear guideline as to where the lines were.
Well, and that's one of the things, is we all used to put disclaimers in the front of our fics that said, hey Fox, please don't sue me, we're afraid of you.
That's exactly what I used to say.
It is exactly what we used to say, because nobody knew. And then there was the occasional author who's like, I don't like this, don't make, fan fictions of my work, don't make a fan art of my work. But actually, even if an author doesn't want you to, you still have every right to do so. And that's part of what we talk about. But separately from that, when, and you can put it on our site anytime, of course, but you're talking about like when you used to have your own fan site, you know, a lot of those fan sites are going by the way of the dodo because they were on Angel Fire, they were on GeoCities, they were on Netscape, you know, and no one's maintaining those old fan sites anymore. You know, the days of the web ring are long gone.
Yes, they are.
We shed a tear for the web ring.
It helped in so many ways.
It really did, because you didn't know how to find anything, and Google was not the monolith that it is today, for better and for worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you wanted to find, you know, the next Gundam Wing fan site, you know, for instance, just saying, Tiny Me was very into Gundam, then you could click the next thing into the web ring. But nowadays, no one's maintaining those. And so, you know, those websites are dying either because the person's no longer interested, or it's just, you know, difficult or expensive to maintain, or, you know, there's been 20, 30 years of global pandemic. The person may not still be alive for whatever reason. And so we're actually working on importing a lot of those old archives into our archive, and saving a lot of those old works, and including, we have a fanzine project that works with the University of Iowa, where a lot of, especially the old Star Trek, Star Wars, Starsky and Hutch, you know, all the big original fanzines, which are old fan magazines that people used to mail out. We are working on scanning those and getting them, you know, digitized, and then bringing those into the archive. And it's really cool to be able to go through and read things from like the 60s and then the 70s and the 80s, and then even, you know, New Trek, and seeing the difference between like how the characterizations have changed, how fandom has evolved over the years, and then also really what's kind of stayed the same in the love of all of these characters.
And one thing that I like to point out, and that people will put down fandom, you know, fan fiction as this almost dirty little thing that the weirdos do. It's like you don't get. Before we had this constant stream of new installments in our favorite fandom, which is now almost all of them. And there's not a whole lot of fallow fandoms right now. We kept the fandom alive by making fan fiction, fan comics, fan stories, and we would sell them at conventions or distribute them freely, or they would go out in zines. And that was decades. Like Star Trek, for one example, was like when the show was canceled in the late 60s through most of the 70s and 80s, when they just started getting the movies on board, that was how they distributed new ideas, how they developed new concepts for how the ships could work.
You know, fandom specifically has always been kind of, you're saying, oh, that little thing, especially put down as like, oh, that's the thing the little girls do.
Yes.
And then it was like, well, you know, the ships and the war things are for the men, but the fan fiction's for the little girls. But the fanzines and the fanzine projects that we call them our fandom olds. And that's not a derogatory term. Like, we owe so much to our fandom olds that kept our fandom alive. And the original, like, Trek fanzines and things that are now scanned in and, you know, readable, like, that work is so incredible and so foundational to fandom that, like, I don't know where we'd be without these women. And their work was, like, it harkens back to the Penny Dreadfuls of the 1900s, where you have these little stories of, you know, Frankenstein and Dracula and these dime horror novels. And, you know, and then it changes and evolves, and goes into our sci-fi stories and our romance stories and our across the universe stories, and let's explore space and let's do everything. And the work of these women cannot be overstated.
And if you're listening to the previous episode of this podcast, I'm going to go into how the rise of science fiction in the modern era, with the Mary Shelley and Jules Verne, all coincided almost perfectly with the decline in prices of small print presses. It was a perfect marriage of opportunity. When that's why fanzines and sci-fi just seem to go together. It's because from the beginning they were working together. It was two trends that hit at exactly the perfect time. And if you look back at who was running them, not entirely women, but a huge majority of women were the ones running those fanzines and everything.
Absolutely. And what would be called women's, like their pocket money, their can't think of the word, like their their little side stash. I still can't think of the word. I'll think of it in 3 hours when it's completely useless.
But yeah, basically their money they're put aside.
Their little stash.
Yeah.
Would always be like, able to fund these little side projects and things. And you think of like, Miss Homemaker, she's, just working on the kids and working on the house, and then like you'd have these side projects where, I had these free online communities where everyone's just doing everything by phone or by letters, and then maintaining these communities where now we have our web forums and discords. And
earlier, before we got rolling here, we were talking about the 90s when we used to be able to go ahead and just get our new fix by sending cash and blank VHS tapes to somebody and getting that back as new episodes of your favorite show. And this worked, which is something people don't understand now. We actually managed to make this work.
And it was definitely not something I should have been doing at age like 13 or 14, but it was almost impossible, 22 years ago in like the pre-torrent era to get new anime. And you couldn't just go on Netflix or Crunchyroll to get, Kodomo no Mocha, or, yes, Gravitation, I admit it. I'm not sure if I should tell you to look it up or not.
I mentioned my Get Smart Friends crossover, so I'll please. We're all friends here.
So what you would do is you would find, some rando on the internet, and you would send them, some blank VHS tapes and some cash, and they would make a copy of their copied fan sub anime, and you would hope that you got what you asked for, and if you didn't, you didn't, but you got something. Enough cash for return postage, and you would be giving some rando on the internet your home address and hope that nothing happened. And you would get a copy of an anime. And that was the most reliable way to get anime until Morpheus and Kazaa and Napster. Mm-hmm. Napster.
Whole different kettle of fish there.
And then, in the first days of torrenting, it was like, okay, what episode can we get in what order? And then you just watch in whatever order people were seating. And sometimes that was not in the order that you were supposed to watch them.
I remember when I first heard about anime was in the very early 90s on late night TV commercials when they would show this brief clip from Akira and you could, send away for copies of this. And I just remember thinking, if I'm getting hooked on this show, which I might if I actually order this thing, how am I going to get the rest of it? I mean, it seems like I'm just dooming myself to watching this one episode over and over again.
Well, at least it was a movie.
Okay, sure, but I'm saying they offer all sorts of anime. Akira was just the clip they showed.
Fair, yeah. No, Akira's spectacular. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. But yeah, and if you couldn't get a hold of the rest of it, you were just SOL because it was so incredibly difficult to get a hold of. And the idea that now we're in a convention with 70,000 people because there's all these people that love what you love, and you're walking down a road and there's people who are dressed in, you know, anime that you saw when you were, you know, 17, 15, and you're like, oh my god, I know what your dress says, and that makes me so incredibly happy to see that you're a fan of what I'm a fan of. Or even stuff that I've never heard of, which almost makes me even happier to see that, like, that fandoms continue in ways that I've never even thought of.
And it's that joy that you start to get people to, you form friendships, you swap notes, and it's almost like a treasure hunt when you go through somebody else's interests, like, oh, you like these 3 things I like, but I've not heard of this one. Let's talk about that.
We set up a board for people to recommend their favorite fanfic, which was an idea of another volunteer. And so the people are coming up, and I'm like, okay, give me your top 5 fandoms. We'll have something up here that you like. And we're pulling off a Post-it note and handing it to them. Like, this is going to be your new favorite thing. And then we hope that they will also recommend something. And so we have recommendations for all these fandoms, 3/4 of which I'm not in, because we want to be able to recommend things for everyone. And if you're in Jujutsu Kaisen, or you're in Star Trek, or you're in Starsky and Hutch, it doesn't matter, because we have something for you.
And I've known, I'll be honest, I've not ever posted anything on AO3.
That's okay.
It hasn't been my thing for a while.
That's fine.
But the people that I know, and these are some very good friends of mine who do post there, love it. They are passionate about AO3. It has sparked something in them, and they feel a very close-knit community sense. So I really want to spread the word about what you are all offering.
So we love everybody. We had this, like, kind of edgy 14-year-old who's like, I'm more of a Wattpad user, but honestly, like, that's great. We don't want to be the only people in town. We want people to be fans of fandom. AO3 exists for everyone. We love the people that post works. We love the people that are readers. We love the people that hit the kudos button. We love the people that comment. We love the people that send us salty support messages that are like, I hate the fact that it says you've already hit the kudos button and I can't, you know, send extra kudos. And the responses, of course, you know, you could write kudos in the comments, and then you've written the comment, but it just says kudos, so it's extra kudos.
No, okay, that's a nice little trick.
Which is not the official support response, by the way. That's my response as Elsinore. But also, you know, I find that you've already left kudos here hilarious.
Well, Elsinore, we both have a big day ahead of ourselves. We both got to get back to what we got to do.
We
but
do.
I really appreciate you talking with me here. I want to help you guys out as much as I can. Where can people support AO3, and where can they find your stuff specifically?
So you can find AO3 at archiveofourown.org. And you can find Transformative Works.
If you want to drop any socials or anything, that's great too. They can follow your adventures on the web.
Transformativeworks.org is our, like, official overarching site where you can find all of our different projects. My handle is Elsinore. I don't write a ton, but it's on there. I have a Game of Thrones story and a Riverdale story, actually.
Okay. Are they the same story?
No.
Okay, just checking.
I do not have any weird crossovers that I have uploaded. I do have weird crossovers, but I have not imported them.
When you said Game of Thrones, the next thing on my mind was, please say you're going to go Jetsons next. I don't know why Game of Thrones and Jetsons came to mind, but I got to think it over.
We can workshop something.
Yes.
We can do that. I love weird crossovers. They are my life. But anyway, I know you have a panel today. Tomorrow, I'm sorry. So I will stop by. And I hope you have a great rest of your convention. The archive itself, you know, we are extraordinarily proud of the fact that we do everything manually. We don't have any AI. We don't have any like automated software, if you write a story and you write a tag that says, oh my god, I should have been asleep, but instead I wrote this fic, we're going to see that on the back end. And we're going to connect that manually to, I wrote this instead of sleeping. We'll never change your tag, but if you hit, oh my god, I should have been asleep, you're going to see everybody else's tag labeled, I should have been asleep. And that's what we actually won our Hugo Award.
I like it.
Is the way that we build and maintain the archive. So we are extraordinarily proud of the work that we do, and also just we love the way that fans light up when they see us, and the warmth that comes from fans who just love to spend time on the archive, and they're like, oh my god, I have so many tabs open. I'm like, same. Because they're just our people.
And this is our people. So again, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks so much. Good to talk to you.